a lot of people point to that and say, EVs are not really clean. And the way that they're being made with virgin materials, it's true. Now we can dramatically offset that by using recycled materials.
All right, so we're here today at Ascend Elements. We're going to be talking to Mike, the CEO, and finding out what they do in here. All right, come on. Mike, thank you so much for making time for us today.
Yep.
I'm really excited to see your process. I've heard of Redwood and Li-Cycle and a bunch of battery recycling companies, and they're all doing it differently. What are you doing different than the other guys are doing?
Well, I guess first off, we don't necessarily consider ourselves a recycling company. Yes, we start with recycled materials, but really what we are is we're an engineered materials company. We make materials that go right back into a new battery. And specifically, it's the anode and cathode materials that we recover and formulate so that we sell those right back to a battery manufacturer. So it's really, these materials are very sustainably made.
Can I almost think of you as a mine and a battery company rolled into one?
Well, definitely we do urban mining. That's a term that's out there. And so we collect all of our raw materials from the environment that's around us. We start with the most concentrated source of lithium and cobalt and nickel, which are in lithium-ion batteries. So that's part of the problem with mining. There's a lot of it in the Earth's crust, but it's getting it and concentrating it that costs a lot. It costs a lot in CO2 emissions and a lot of energy and things like that. So we're starting with a very, very concentrated source of these critical elements. And we collect them, gather them, and make them into new battery materials.
Why weren't you doing this 10 years ago?
Actually, we were doing it 10 years ago. This is how long we've been working on this process. It really started with some technology at Worcester Polytechnic Institute in how to make battery recycling more economic. And the approach was to focus on the highest value material that you could possibly make out of spent lithium-ion batteries. And so that was cathode material. And so really for the last 10 years or so, we've been developing and improving upon this process, improving upon the efficiencies, and really we're now getting to commercial scale now.
You guys take a battery, like right out of my Tesla when it's dead, and what do you do with it? How do you get it back to being a battery again?
We do start with batteries that could be from end-of-life batteries, your dead Tesla battery that no longer is suitable for driving your car around. We take that battery in and we begin to disassemble it and process it. One of our first steps is to discharge it. And so we want to make that battery safe to handle. So we make sure it's discharged all the way, disassemble it, and then we shred it. So it's a very low-tech process actually of shredding batteries. But what we ultimately get out of that process is we are able to separate some of the metals, which are copper and aluminum foils, and also from another material that's called black mass in the industry. So black mass is the anode and cathode powders that are in a battery. And so we are able to recover that, and that's what we begin refining through our processes here in our facility in Westboro.
Okay, so you got this black mass, and now you're not melting it like some other companies are doing.
No.
You're putting it through this aqueous process. But I'm a layperson, I don't really understand this, it just looks like sand. How do you get that into good stuff?
So it is a chemical process, and that's a little bit of our secret sauce. It's a process, like I mentioned, that was developed at WPI to take that black mass and to further process it and refine it so that we can get cathode material out of it. More specifically, what we make and what we focus on is an NMC hydroxide. So NMC is a cathode material that's used in a lot of lithium-ion batteries, in particular EV batteries. So we're able to make this material directly from spent batteries, and it's through a process of purification and rebalancing metals and directly precipitating out this new material. And so by doing that, we're making this really high-value cathode material. We do it directly without separating any metals whatsoever. So the nickel and the manganese and the cobalt, we keep those together and make this new NMC hydroxide directly from this black mass.
Now, I heard that if I'm a battery customer of yours and I would like a different formula than what you just got in, you can maybe make that formula for me?
Yeah, we can. Our process starts out from a shredding process, so we put everything in that shredder. Lithium-ion batteries. Not all lithium-ion batteries are the same. The battery that's in your cell phone or your laptop is certainly different than the battery that's in your EV. It has different chemistry. It has different metals in it. So we can take all of those without any sorting, but we go through the same process of discharging and shredding, and ultimately we end up with that black mass. Now that black mass can have different amounts of metals in it. What we do is we bring that black mass in and we begin to process it. And as long as it has, the lithium in there, the cobalt, the nickel, the manganese, those are all very valuable elements that we take, and that's what we begin to process. Now, certainly our output material is that cathode material, and we need the ability to rebalance the metals, and so we do that partway through our process in solution. If the incoming material is deficient in nickel, as an example, and we need to make a high nickel cathode material, then we'll add nickel halfway through the process to rebalance those metals.
Okay, but why go through all of this? I mean, this is a lot of complicated stuff. Why not just mine it out of the ground like we've been doing for years?
Yeah, well, we're going to continue to need to mine, but we certainly don't want to be throwing these valuable metals away, because we put a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of cost into pulling them out of the ground and refining them. The beauty of what it is we're doing, and really where the industry ultimately needs to go, is to continue to constantly reuse these metals. Once we actually get them out of the ground, we certainly want to make the most use of them possible. So once we use them once, we recycle it, we use it again and again and again. And in that way, what we're going to be doing long term is we're going to be reducing the need for mining. And in doing so, we can make these cathode materials, not only are they more sustainable, but also we're able to be more cost effective. And also the environmental footprint that we have is dramatically better. Just as an example, we lower the CO2 emissions on making cathode material over 90% when we bring in spent lithium-ion batteries and make new cathode material. And so it's much, much better for the environment. Certainly you're not pulling this out of the ground. And so as much as we possibly can, we want to, in fact, we need to recycle these materials.
So if I had a Tesla today with a second generation recycled battery made from Ascend Elements, it would actually be a much cleaner vehicle.
We don't make the battery, we make the materials that go into the battery. But yes, you're absolutely correct. We make these materials that are much more sustainably made, and they have a lower CO2 footprint, so it's much smaller. That's a big concern to a lot of OEMs today. They're very concerned about what's the carbon footprint of my EV, and it's fairly well known that the carbon footprint of an EV is higher than a traditional ICE vehicle. A lot of people point to that and say, EVs are not really clean, and the way that they're being made with virgin materials, it's true. Now we can dramatically offset that by using recycled materials. And so the goal or the aim is to get it down below where a traditional ICE vehicle is today. And certainly with an EV, I think a lot of people know that long term the running carbon footprint of that is much, much lower than an ICE vehicle. But it's just that upfront carbon footprint we want to overall as a group or an industry lower.
But here's the problem: if we do that again to a third battery, isn't that one going to suck? I mean, you can't just keep recycling forever.
Well, actually, you can keep recycling forever. These metals, once we bring them in, we dissolve them back into solution. We take it back down right to the atom level. And so the atom isn't destroyed. We continue to remake it into new material, always. And so by doing that, you can infinitely recycle these metals. And so that's something we need to continue to do. So yeah, third, fourth, fifth generation, we can constantly be making them. And it's not just the performance of these materials is not lower. In fact, it's the same or even better in some cases.
So that's the part I can't wrap my head around, because I think like a lot of people, you think, okay, I recycled this bottle and now it's kind of a crappier plastic than it was before, or a crappier piece of paper. But this isn't the same kind of recycling. And so can you tell me how can the battery even be better the second or third time?
Well, because you're not actually taking it down to the atom level with your paper or your plastic. You need to be taken down to even a further level. And so that's what we do. We break it down right to the atoms and then reformulate new particles, high-performing cathode material from it. And by doing that, that's how we're able to get the same performance or the increased performance versus cathode material made from virgin sources.
So we're here at your facility in Westboro, Massachusetts, but I hear that you're also doing a bigger facility down in Georgia. Mm-hmm. I don't quite get it. How does that work?
So with many different processes, you need to scale up. In Westboro here, we're standing in a what we call a pilot operation. So we have had this facility running and operational, and we are making this cathode precursor in this facility. But what we're doing down in Georgia is a much larger commercial scale facility. This facility is only able to process and create a certain amount of cathode precursor material per month. In our facility in Georgia, we'll be measuring that not necessarily in tons, but in kilotons of material.
Oh.
So our facility in Georgia, the capacity on processing batteries will be around 30,000 kilotons per year.
Wow.
It's a lot of material, a lot of batteries. And so we'll be able to bring in and process quite a few down in that facility.
Is that strategically located because that's where a lot of cars are made and batteries are made and so forth?
Certainly a lot of batteries are made down in the southeast region, but really, if you look at the map of the United States and you started to plot out all of the different locations of where these large battery factories are going, they're all over the United States. And some of them are in Georgia, yes, Tennessee, some are announced in Kentucky, North Carolina, Texas, Nevada, Ohio, Michigan. So those are some of the states that have some of these large battery gigafactories, as they're called. But what I'm saying is we have to also build large recycling facilities next to these large gigafactories to process a lot of their manufacturing scrap.
So after you've shredded the batteries, you're able to get rid of the iron and the things like that goes to some other recycler. Now you're left with this black mass. What does that look like?
Yeah, so the black mass, we actually have some here. So this black mass is actually a powder. When you're making a battery, there are two sides to the battery. There's the anode side and the cathode side. They both happen to be black powders. Those black powders are taken by the battery manufacturer. They're mixed into a slurry and they're coated onto either aluminum or copper foil. Okay. So they start out life in the battery. It looks something like this.
Now, why can't you just stop there and take this and make a new battery out of it? Why do we have to do anything more?
Well, it just doesn't have the same performance.
Okay.
So we're really trying to get very high purity, high performing material. At the end of the day, these batteries that have reached their end of life, there's something that's wrong with them. On a microstructure level, there's some cracking, there's some side reactions that were happening. And so really you do have to take that material, and even though it looks the same, you have to process it to get it back to, I guess, a purity level and also a structure that's going to give you very high performing material. So what's in this black mass here is a combination of graphite, which is typically your anode material. It's also your lithium. It's your nickel, cobalt, your manganese.
Oh, wow.
So all of those metals are mixed together, but it's your anode and cathode powders. After we do a shredding process, we take the black mass from that shredding process. So really, you can see it's a very fine powder. When you shred a battery, not all of it is a fine powder. Okay. So some of it are big, large foils that come off of that shredding process. We're able to sieve them out. They're larger pieces that we're easily able to separate off. We have those recycled, the copper, the aluminum foils. Okay. Those are typically recycled by other parties. Okay. But what we're after this black mass because we're making this new cathode material out of it.
So this is almost black gold, like
for us it is. Okay. Yes. So this is the feedstock material that we need in order to make new cathode material.
Okay. And so I'm seeing here on the desk that there's some other materials. Is this what you can get out of that?
Yeah. So we extract a cobalt sulfate to extract a nickel sulfate and also a lithium carbonate. This is a process that's known as solvent extraction, and that's using an organic solvent to selectively extract out each one of these metals. We do that as a part of our process, but that's not the main part of our process. Okay. So our intellectual property, what we at Ascend Elements does that is unique, is to take the black mass and convert it into new cathode material without any of this separation. So we go direct from this black mass to the cathode material.
Which is what I, as a battery manufacturer, want.
That's what as a battery manufacturer, that's what they want. That's what they need in order to put into their new batteries. That's what goes into the slurry.
And not only can you give me some like generic cathode, but you can give me exactly what I want?
Exactly what you want in the metal ratio you need.
Wow.
We do that though by sometimes adding a little bit of nickel in there. So sometimes the cathode material or the black mass that we bring in is deficient in one of these metals. That's why we make the cobalt sulfate, the nickel sulfate, and we sometimes need to rebalance the metals, need to add a little bit of nickel, need to add a little bit of cobalt. in the process.
You know, at some point in your business when you started, I'm sure it cost you way more to make your first, battery. Where are you in that process? Are you at like equilibrium now, where it costs as much now to make a battery as it does to make it from a mine, or are you getting cheaper? Like, where are you at right now?
So when you make cathode material from mine sources, you're relying upon the miner and a refiner to make that essentially that raw material. So nickel doesn't come out of the ground looking like this. You have to dig it out of the ground, you have to concentrate it, and ultimately refine it to a nickel sulfate. Someone has to buy this material, and that's relatively expensive. Then a cathode manufacturer takes nickel, cobalt, manganese, they mix it together in a cathode precursor, and that's ultimately then it's mixed with then a lithium source and made into a cathode material. So all of that is a relatively costly process. What we do, our end product wants them all together. And the way that we bring it in, they're all together in this black mass already. So you can see that it's a lot more cost effective when you start with a source that has all these metals in already a semi-refined state, already all together, that is relatively cost effective to go right from a black mass to a cathode material and not have to buy your raw materials from mine sources that come from all over the world.
Is your process going to get even cheaper as you get more batteries fed into the system and as you have more and more plants?
Certainly as we grow and as we scale, there's certainly some efficiencies that we will gain, and really the whole industry will gain, by increasing our scale. But what I'll say is right now, even at a smaller scale, a pilot scale, we don't pay 100% of the nickel price. We pay something far less for that because we're taking scrap material. We're taking an end-of-life battery that has very little value, and in taking that and essentially upcycling it, refining it, and making a very high-value material out of it. So our cost to do so, our raw material costs, are very, very low. By doing that, we're able to produce a cathode material that's very cost-effective.
For our investors who are watching right now and they're looking to see if this is like a winner-takes-all industry, is that what this is? Like the first to get there cheaply enough will win? Or is this going to be such a big industry that there'll be a lot of players?
This will be a big industry. We're making and deploying lots and lots of batteries right now, not only in EVs, but also energy storage systems. It's certainly, in the amount of batteries that we're deploying, we're not measuring in the megawatt hour, we're measuring it in the gigawatt hours. Soon we'll be measuring in the terawatt hours, which is really millions of tons of batteries. And so ultimately those batteries will reach an end of life. And whether it's in a cell phone or that will last 3 to 4 years, or an EV that lasts 10 to 15 years, or an energy storage system that lasts 15 to 20 years, eventually it's going to reach its end of life. Eventually it's going to need to be reprocessed and made into new battery material. So we want to be able to harvest all of that material, and it's going to be a really big industry. If you go back a decade ago, if you had a lot of lithium-ion batteries that needed to be recycled, and it was a smaller amount, they were typically just smelted or burned. And that's the technology that was available. You know, it's not very environmentally friendly and certainly has a lot of emissions. We're evolving as an industry with better technology and being able to bring it and have more refined products and extract more value out of that.
Speaking of growing technology, a lot of people are saying, well, there's going to be magical batteries soon, there's going to be graphene or something like that, so I'm just going to wait for that for my car, and also that's going to change all of this, so what you're doing now is a waste of time. What do you say to those people?
We've actually had modern lithium-ion batteries since the early 90s. There have been a lot of advancements. It's primarily all around to bring the cost down of the batteries so that it makes things like an EV possible. We're not spending $1,000 a kilowatt hour on a battery anymore. We're spending closer to $100 a kilowatt hour on a battery. So that's where a lot of the advancements has been happening in trying to drive down costs. By recycling, we're continuing to do that. We're continuing to enable those lower and lower costs because we're reusing, and in a very efficient way, we're reusing these critical metals and minerals in making new battery materials. So it's really something the industry needs to do in order to continue that downward cost curve. And really what we're doing, and you see it in a lot of the metals prices right now, a lot of the metals prices, particularly battery metal prices, are spiking. And so this is certainly going to help offset some of that.
Now, I wanted to ask you about careers here. You guys are expanding. I think I saw on your careers page you're looking for people. If there are people watching right now that would like to get into this field, is it growing? Are you looking for more people? What kind of skills do they need?
Yeah, we're trying to hire in all areas right now, everywhere from finance and marketing all the way to all of our technical positions. So we're in operational positions. So we're expanding our R&D team. We're expanding our operations team. We're building plants not only here in North America, but we'll also soon be building plants in Europe. The size of our team will increase fourfold just this year.
Wow, so this is a big thing of black gold here, right?
You can see it's a powder.
Wow. Can I ask a dumb question? Like, how many batteries does it take to get this? I'm picturing like it's one like EV battery, but I mean, is it 10 of them? Is it 100 of them?
If you think about bringing in 1 kilogram of batteries,
okay,
about half of that weight turns into black mass.
Really, that much?
That much.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, the major material that's in a battery is the cathode material, and then the second largest is then the anode material. So while there's a lot of things that are in a battery, the anode and cathode material are the largest by weight and volume.
So if I were to do it the other way, if I were to burn this, doing pyrometallurgy, I still get some of this back, or do I lose some of this? So what have I lost if I were to burn it instead of using your process?
If you were to take a whole battery and you were to throw it in a big furnace and burn it, there's an organic electrolyte that burns. There's a lot of plastic that's in a battery, so that burns.
That's all gone, okay.
So there's the graphite material. That will also burn.
Oh, okay.
And so you're losing a lot of material when you do that. And then if you're burning organics and you're burning plastics and you're burning graphite, you have to abate all of those emissions. So that's a lot of cost that's in there. Certainly you're emitting CO2, and so that's also not very environmentally friendly. So and there's a lot of energy that's needed in order to do that.
Now, your company right now is a private company. Can you talk about any future plans to go public, or do you know any of that now, or is that just something that can't be discussed?
We have been raising money from some private investors to continue to grow and scale our company. That's what's helping us not only build facilities like this pilot facility, but also our larger commercial scale facilities like we're building in Georgia. So we'll be heading down that path with private investment for a while.
So tell me, are there any partners that you're working with that you can tell us about? I know you've got a lot of NDAs and people you can't, but are there any that are publicly talkable?
We're working with many different customers and partners. Some that have already been announced and are public is one is with Honda.
Oh, wow.
Recycling all of their batteries in North America.
Oh, wow.
We are also working with one of our early investors, Jaguar Land Rover is another OEM.
Oh, wow.
And working with them on recycling their batteries. We are also working with battery manufacturers as well. SK Battery America is a large battery manufacturing facility in Georgia that we're working with them very closely. We're a key partner of theirs to recycle their material, and that's also a big reason why we are located in Georgia as well.
Excellent.
What really the industry is moving towards is a closed loop system, where a battery manufacturer has battery material that's available, or a vehicle manufacturer, an EV manufacturer, has material available. They need it to be processed, but ideally they want it right back. And that's really the closed loop system that really the whole industry is going to be moving towards. So they provide the material to us, they take the material right back.
I guess a lot of viewers are watching right now and they're like, well, you're using a lot of chemicals. Chemicals are bad. So is this bad, what you guys are doing?
No, in fact, it's very environmentally friendly, what we're doing. It's certainly much better than smelting or burning these batteries. It is chemistry. It's primarily acid-based chemistry, but it is safe, non-toxic, non-hazardous. The process is very safe to be around and into practice.
And talk a bit about IP. Is this kind of thing where Jesse and I could just go start doing this tomorrow, figure it out, and compete with you, or is this IP that you've got locked down?
We do have a lot of PhD chemists that are part of the process that help develop this, but we also have IP that is filed, and so we have a certain amount of it protected. But the problem with filing patents is it's also public. So while we have it protected and in our filed IP, we also have a tremendous amount of trade secrets. And so those two combined is really what brings out our IP portfolio and is really the backbone of our company. It's really what differentiates us from a recycling company. really it's not too difficult to bring in batteries and shred them up and to generate this black mass. There's not a lot of technology in that. But where the technology really comes in is to convert this black mass into the cathode material.
Well, thank you for showing us around. That's why you're seeing a lot of blurred stuff right now, because you were kind enough to let us in, but we have to make sure that no one sees what's going on in here. Thank you so much for watching Disruptive Investing. We hope you found that enjoyable, and we'd really appreciate it if you hit the subscribe button. The more subscribers we have, the more people we can interview, so you're really helping us out if you hit that. Thank you so much for watching Disruptive Investing.